Hey guys, I don't even know what, kind of lost track on this project. Let me give you an update where we're at since we stopped the last video. All right, if you watched the last video, you saw that we had the engine sitting in the Jeep, and that's where we left off. I spent an entire day in here hooking up stuff, not an entire day, but an entire work day in here, putting my shifter back on the transmission, trying to get my clutch linkage to work, which it doesn't appear that it does normally. Getting everything situated underneath the Jeep, putting in my drive lines, front and rear, bolting up all my emergency brake, parking brake, whatever. Getting my PTO set up on my winch, set up and adjusted right. That took an entire day. And then I went ahead and put my water pump on, just stuck it on there, my exhaust manifolds and my pulleys to try to get some alignment stuff figured out. And this is where we are hung up. First of all, I'll see if I can get the camera in there so you can see. I have a conflict going on between my steering shaft and my oil filter that it'll hit. If I turn the wheels more to the left, it'll end up hitting right there. The other conflict that I'm fighting here is room with the distributor. Now, again, I couldn't find any videos on how to do this swap, so this is why you get me. This is why I'm trying to do this, just to try to show people how I learned and lessons I learned along the way. There's a balance between space on the distributor and stuff below the engine, and honestly just having the oil pan hang down too low. I kind of liked where it was sitting before, but it was just way too low, and my exhaust manifold was almost hitting my steering shaft or steering box. It wasn't right, but it's a balance again of playing of, if I go up too high, then my distributor's jammed into my firewall as it is right now, because I've been playing with my with my motor mounts, stacking those two biscuits up, trying to get it right when it should be one above, one below. So I'm going to try to get it back down into a reasonable spot there, find my happy medium, and then I'll bring you back when I have a solution. All right, it's a different day. I've been busy a little bit, getting my pulleys to line up and fabric cobbling together a mount for my alternator, which is pretty slick. It's adjustable. I think it's tied in pretty good. And then I got my adjuster bracket over there in the paint booth drying. While that's all going, I need to move on to my next project, and that is figuring out how we're going to make that steering shaft clear the oil filter. All right, I'm going to come up with a plan and bear it back. Okay, so here is my dilemma. You guys saw that the steering link hits my oil filter, which I removed from back there. So this steering link is in the way. Now, there is a solution. The truck that this came out of, the S10 pickup, actually had this remote oil filter set up on it. And what it does is those lines run forward to the engine and then up here, and then you mount it somewhere, the oil filter there for remote. But these are problematic. They tend to leak. As you can tell, that's been leaking. I can't find the bolts, and I would need a new O-ring. And the biggest issue I have is that it conflicts with where my exhaust is going to go. Obviously, we talked about the exhaust coming up on the forward on this side. There's too much going on with exhaust coming this way and then those lines coming up and they hit each other. So what I'm thinking is about making that steering arm there not be a problem anymore. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to heat that sucker up and I'm going to bend it. I'm going to measure. I need to come this way about 1 inch. And so I'm going to heat it right in there real good and give it a tweak. Bring it right back into where I need it. That won't hurt anything. My steering geometry, this thing has a big old dent in it right there, is going to be just fine. Let's do it. Okay, I've got that thing removed, the steering arm removed. You guys thought I was going to heat it up right in there, huh? I probably could have, but I know I'm going to need some pressure on this thing. I need to move it away from the ball. And right now when I put my square up here, my straight edge, and I measure it all out and everything, it looks like this is 1 inch over. It needs to be 1 inch that way. So I've got my little plane of reference here. If I can show you how I did it. Yeah, it comes out to about the 1. I need that moved over to where it's about on the 2. So break out the rosebud, let heat this guy up pretty good and see if we can get a tweak on it. Back a little bit more. I'm gonna let that cool. I'm just gonna sit there and let that cool off as I move on to another project. Probably go eat a little bit of lunch, and then we're gonna come back out, put that thing back on. It'll clear my oil filter and life will be good. All right guys, it's been a day. I haven't been doing a lot of videoing because I've just been doing a lot of little tweaking on things. You can see I've gotten a lot more done. The biggest win today though was getting my steering arm bent and out of the way so that I have room for my oil filter. Everything, all that stuff works out. I'm happy medium. Oil filter has space, my distributor has room, my exhaust manifold clears my steering box, got my alternator bracket all set up. I started kind of digging through the electronic stuff and seeing what I needed in exhaust. But here's a little tip before I let you guys go. Hey, I'm doing a Chevy 4.3 liter V6 swap into this old Jeep, and I realized the tip that probably a bunch of you S10 guys want to know. Everybody wants to get rid of these. Everybody wants to get rid of this, the nasty, dirty, leaky remote oil filter unit that comes on these vehicles. And you can. I'm going to show you an easy way. The trick is you just take the 2 bolts out that are holding it on, drop the 2 bolts, get rid of this thing, get rid of the whole thing, throw it out. Go online, go onto Amazon, and order this part right here. This is a little adapter that screws right into the block. These threads are the same that are in the block. They already exist in there. It's part number 14081300, and that's a GM part number. This screws into the block. This part screws right into your oil filter. Another tip I picked up somewhere for these S10 engines, or any 4.3, anything you run your 4.3 engine in, Wix 51040, 51040, stubby, shorty oil filter. There you go. Hopefully I can save you guys some pain. All right, hey guys, we're back at her today. This time, exhaust. I was just gonna take this thing in and have a buddy do the whole exhaust on this thing, but I thought, you know what, I can save a lot of time and hassle. And really, when I put the fenders back on and everything, I don't want to take them back off, and now's the time to get in there and do the exhaust. So we're gonna try to do it. Now, quick recap. The trick on this thing, if you remember getting a V6 in these, is to use a passenger side exhaust manifold on the driver's side and dump to the front with the idea of coming around the front of the engine, tying in a Y off of the normal passenger side, and then going back from there. Which, you know, there's some room in there. It might be a challenge, but we'll figure that out. But thankfully, like a lot of things on this Jeep, I was able to get a bunch of stuff off the old truck that 4.3 came out of, the S10 pickup, to include the exhaust. So I think I'm going to be able to make some magic happen with this, because right here, this is going to be the critical piece, is this Y. It might not look exactly like that when we're done, but I need to make that somewhere down below this passenger side exhaust manifold. And then I can use my bend there to tie off of my driver's side there and come around. And I don't know how much room I'm going to have with my radiator. I think my radiator is going to sit about there. Anyway, so I just got to come in here in front of that balancer, kind of as close as I can without hitting it. And then underneath my motor mount here to tie in. I don't want my exhaust, I'm not going to be able to keep it all nice and tucked up tight to the engine. I just don't want it hanging down, if I can help it, down below like the skid plate level. So, all right, that's the plan. I'm going to sit here with some soapstone and a tape measure and probably my cutting wheel. And I'm going to start trying to make this happen. Follow along. Here we go. Alrighty, we got a plan. A lot of exhaust work, in my experience, cobbling stuff together here in the garage, becomes a game of connect the dots, right? You figure out where it has to go and then make it go there. So I don't want my exhaust to run down below the frame here. If I do, that'll be the first thing to get smashed up on some rocks or whatever if I plumb it through there. I do have room right inside the frame rail here. So that's going to be my plan. And this is going to be my tight point, my limb fac, if you will, right where this exhaust dumps out of here and then goes down into the hole here where I'm going to run it inside the frame rail there. That's my limb fac. So I got to build my Y to fit that perfectly, and then I can just connect my Y around to the front of the engine to the other side, and a tailpipe to go out the back. And so I've been doing a little measuring, and I think I'm going to be able to do it, whacking this up here and trying to preserve this guy, my O2 sensor. I've got a bunch of cutting ahead of me, a bunch of measuring. Hopefully when I bring you back, we have some exhaust tied into this manifold. All right, this piece here might not look like much, but it's exactly what we need to fit onto our passenger side exhaust manifold and plumb right where we want it to go. It goes right down into the frame channel. Frame channel sits about like this, and this exits in a pretty good spot. All we had to do was take a little pie cut out of it here and tip it the right direction, and then we had to cut the about a 6-inch section out of there and re-glue the bell on there. So I'm going to leave everything tacked for now until I get it where I'm happy, and then I'll final weld everything, clean the inside out and all that good stuff. So, all right, man. Now I'm going to bolt this in place, because now we get to do a little connect the dots, going from there around to there. method to my madness here. We cut the bell off, but I kept this turn, this first turn, because I knew I was gonna need it to get away from this frame here. So that's how that's gonna kind of set up. Now I'll come in here and I'll put some bolts on that, or nuts on those bolts to hold that in place, and just keep on connecting. We're making progress. Whew, oh boy, it's been a day. This isn't necessarily my best work on exhaust, but you get the idea. Across the front, down, and come around my table, and into our Y, down there, and then along the frame rail. Now, yes, I've got some stuff from the parts store, some leftover parts from my Model A, some of that stuff that came with the original truck. It's all pretty ugly, so I got a can of black paint to paint that all once I get it all welded up real nice. So that's what I'm gonna do now. I'm gonna pull this out and final weld everything that I just have tacked. And then we'll hopefully be able to shove it back in there. I think the way that it's all built, I should just be able to unbolt it from both manifolds and drop it down. When I get this thing together, it is not gonna be removable. Like, it's gonna be in there once I attach my tailpipe and stuff. So, all right, man, I got some welding to do. All right, well, this looks like something straight out of a horror movie, but it is going to be functional, the exhaust, and it's good. It'll work. I got a little fiddling done on the fuel system, but that's gonna be another video. I'm just stoked to get this done. I'm wrapping this up. I'm gonna call this one complete for the exhaust for now. I'll do one more shot tomorrow morning when I get the exhaust bolted all up so you can check it out. A little walk around in the credits at the end of this. All right, guys, now that we got the exhaust buttoned up on the old Jeep, it's time to move on to the fuel system. Now, I'm not an expert on any kind of fuel injection at all. Normally, I'm a carburetor guy, but we're gonna run the old Tibby, the old throttle body injection setup that would have come on a stock 1992 Chevy S10, which is what this motor came out of. Now, the way that this is set up, obviously, here's our throttle body. Forgive the giant mess. I'm trying to make this mess appear on the vehicle more than anything else. But anyway, here's how this works. This is our inlet, and this is our outlet of fuel. It needs a feed and a return, and then that just runs on pressure. It needs to be fed, I don't know, I've read anywhere between 9 and 15, somewhere around 12 PSI from a fuel pump. So let's see how my plan is to set this up. I didn't really know how to run well, I knew how. I didn't really know the best way to run a feed and a return. So let me show you what I'm working with underneath the Jeep. That's what where are we? Here we are. That's what I have underneath the Jeep. On the bottom of the gas tank. This big one was a drain, and then this one was a feed line. The feed line was only 1/4 inch, which was going to have to change. It needs to be 3/8 feed and at least like a 5/16 return. Thankfully, these are both just pipe fittings, so I was able to. I'm going to be able to utilize these. The big one is a feed, and the small one is a return. Now, yeah, these are both on the bottom of the gas tank. I don't know. You put your comments down below. You tell me if this is going to work out with my return right here next to the feed, and make sure it's not going to girdle up and cause issues. But here's the biggest win on this whole fuel system, which I'm about to show you. These lines right here, I did not bend these up and prep them and put them in this thing. Instead, these are the stock Chevy S10 fuel lines. And look how amazingly close they come out. From there, you can see them run right up to where they stick up there by the throttle body. This is pretty sweet, so that's going to save me just a bunch of time on this fuel line installation. Okay, and then this is how I'm going to make this throttle body work. This fuel pump right here, it's a Carter P5001 Carter fuel pump. It's supposed to be for throttle body injections. It's going to work pretty sweet. I'm going to come out of that big fitting on the bottom of the tank and go right. Actually, I'm going to go into my filter. with just a regular soft line, clamp it on there because it's not pressurized or anything. Come out of there, another soft line, right into my pump. And then from there, all I gotta do is put a flare and a flare fitting on the fuel line that came off of the S10 pickup. I've just gotta change the fitting end on that, get it lined up, and it'll connect straight to that. Now for the return, this is where it gets a little trickier. I don't have a good flare fitting setup for the return to go back into the tank. So I'm gonna use a little bit of soft line. I'm just gonna basically use a barb fitting like this and run it on there and clamp it and hope it works. Is that gonna work? I don't know. Maybe you TBI guys can tell me for sure. But that's what I gotta get busy doing now. I gotta do a little tweaking on these lines. I need to be bent just a little bit to get them to line up right. So I'm gonna go ahead and bend them, mount my throttle body on the engine, and then tweak them where they lay just where I want. Start cutting that one for the feed. Yeah, hopefully I'll bring you back here in a minute when I have a fuel system. All right, hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. Here's my, again, this was the drain on the original CJ5 tank that I've put a just a barb outlet fitting on. And we're gonna go about putting this fuel system in kind of just the same way we put the exhaust in. Just start at a point and start building and then connecting the dots, right? Here's my setup, right? My pump, filter, and I know this isn't the way this filter's supposed to work, but it clamps on there good, and that's how I'm gonna run. It's not pressurized on that side, so I'm not really worried about it. And I'm just gonna hide it right up here in my frame rail, just about like so. And all I gotta do is run a little connector line right there. And in fact, I'll probably clamp my fuel pump in somewhere that makes sense like this. And then I probably won't even clamp this one down. I'll just let it float and run a little loop right there, hose that goes into it. And I think that'll be fine. If it wants to try to get away from me there, I can find a way to clamp it. I have a big clamp that came with it, but it doesn't fit inside the frame rail, and well, today's not the day to build a new clamp. So that's where I'm at with there. And then you can see my original S10 fuel lines here. This is gonna work out pretty good. I just gotta come in here and flare somewhere around in here, and that fitting should go right into my fuel pump. So I'm gonna line it up here, find a good spot for it, make a couple holes in the frame for my clamp, and just mount it using some 5/16 hardware. All right, we just about got this fuel system initial setup done here. This is just my feed line. There's no pressure on this one, so I'm not real concerned about needing high-speed clamps on here. I don't know if I like that. Shouldn't kink. It should be fine. So I'm gonna clamp these down, and then we gotta figure out exactly where these steel lines are gonna go and where I can put a fitting, where I need to put my fitting to tie into my fuel pump. All right. Is to get these two steel lines right here routed in such a way that they go where they need to up there, and then figure out exactly where I need to cut one and put a flare on it so it'll tie into that pump right there. And the other one I'm just gonna cut and tie into there. All right, I think we have a fuel system plumbed on this thing finally. Come on up here close and I'll show you. It was really nice having, you're gonna wanna come up above and look down here, having these lines from the S10 pickup, because they work right here just fine. They make this bend. And then I tell you what, go on under the truck and or the Jeep, and let's check out what we got going underneath here. All right, I've got to do a little tweaking and tying up here, but here's where we are. This is my feed line. I kind of don't like that. If it kinks, I might just put some hard line in there with two little shorties or something. Non-pressurized, okay, through my filter, my pump, and then into the hard line, and I just flared it and put a fitting on the end there. And then the return line, I have this hose on it. Is it gonna work? I don't know. It's got these fancy fuel injection hose clamps on there. I think it'll work. If not, I might have to redo that altogether, but we'll see. If this doesn't work with it being in the bottom of the tank right next to the intake there, or where the fuel goes to the throttle body, I might have to drill a hole and run a hose up to the upper part of the tank, but I think this will get us close for now. All right, fuel system, we'll call that complete for now. Yep.
So, doing thermostat testing if it works.
Okay, what do we got our water at now?
At
170? Okay, drop it in there, see if it opens up. Yeah, there you go. See if you look, you can see a gap developing there.
Yeah.
I'll zoom in on it. Okay, yep, it's opening up. Working pretty good, about 180. Pull that thing out and let's watch it cool off, and we'll see that gap close. There it is, closing down. All right, that's the thermostat that I think we will use in the Jeep.
All right.
Okay, we're back at it. On the Jeep again. My son's got the thermostat housing. He's gonna put the thermostat in. We actually forgot to put it in yesterday. But we got it, we tested it. We know it's the right temperature for us, so he's gonna pull it up and put it in. I have started on wiring. Now I'm gonna just be up front and tell you on the wiring here. I purchased a kit from Howell, EFI, and because I didn't want to take that. That is the original S10 wiring harness. I didn't want to sit there and pick it apart. I know you can. You just hook everything up that you need and take everything else out. I didn't want to do that. To me, it was worth the money to go ahead and just order this kit from Howell, and I'll show you how it mounts up. It's pretty slick. I did have to chop a pretty good sized hole in my firewall. That there already was a hole, but I had to make it bigger. And that actually fits a grommet that I have for it, because you have to be able to shove this stuff through the hole. Now I've already come inside and set up my computer. This is slick the way this sets up. Ooh, let me zoom out so you can see what's going on. There we go. That's just the stock S10 computer in a real custom sheet metal box bolted to the firewall. The zip tie is just for extra security, don't worry. And then we've got a few wires we hook up inside the vehicle. This kit is slick. Comes with its own little fuse block to protect a few things, and everything on here is just uber labeled. Real easy. 12 volt ignition. These two wires, this is my service engine soon light, which I got an idea for. And then I think I have a constant hot. Yeah, well, no. Oh, and here's my plug-in for finding out what's going on, what's wrong with it. I can plug my little scanner tool in. If I get a check engine light, see what's happening. There's a couple other things. Neutral safety switch, I think, yeah. Anyway, you just clip the big stuff into it, run the rest of it outside. It's pretty clear what needs to be inside the rig and what needs to be outside. And we take the rest of this on the outside, and it's just a matter now of laying everything on there and start clipping things up. Should be pretty straightforward. We're going to work on that for a bit, and then I've got a couple other, I'll show you some other things I did on the rig to get make it a little easier for me. My oil, the S10, the original setup would have had this big adapter plugged right down into the back of that oil port there. But I like my analog gauge, and so I put that in there in line. But what I got rid of was I had the idiot light. This was the wire that went to the idiot light in the old speedometer, and it was set up to this little sensor right here that when it got oil pressure, it would shut the idiot light out. Well, I don't have that anymore, so instead I'm going to repurpose that idiot light in there for my check engine light. And I have my analog gauge in the Jeep, so I'll be able to tell my oil pressure by looking at my oil pressure gauge, but I'll use the light that's in the speedometer there for oil as my check engine light. Okay, Luke's going to put this thermostat in, and we're going to go ahead and clip a bunch of wiring together, and I'll show you some tricks as we get closer. All right, we made a little bit of headway on the wiring system. It's pretty easy, you know, we just kind of start by laying the harness where it makes sense and then start connecting things. I really like this harness because it came with our, you know, the energizers for for the squirters there and the old toilet bowl injection. You know, it's pretty easy. I just started connecting stuff. Here's a question for all you smart guys, smarter than me. Air diverter solenoid, divert solenoid. Do I even need this? I don't have an air divert solenoid, or what we are diverting air to. That's some smog stuff I'm not going to use. I do have almost everything I need for the EGR setup, which I just got to get one more little module and connect it, and the EGR solenoid, and that gets connected there, and I'll tie that all up. This is kind of tricky with the coil. This is easy, right? This little pigtail goes from this side of the coil to the distributor, but the input bound side here, these kind of stumped me. This pink wire is going to be power, and I'm honestly just going to use my coil wire that was, you know, ran the coil on the Jeep before and tied into that. The white one though is for tack, and so I'm going to run that around. I got a tack coming. I'll hook up on that. I went and picked up, while I was at the parts house looking for some stuff, a 1 single wire O2 sensor, so that'll clip right into my kit there. And what else? I bought a belt that was too big, so I'm going to take it back. Yeah, that's it for right now. All right, I got to take a couple days away from the project, so it's back out. It's evicted from the garage, so I'm going to go ahead and get my fenders wherever they are, hiding back behind the trash can. I am done needing the fenders off, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and bolt my fenders all on, so my hood, put my grill on and everything, and then we can get into the cool stuff that is in those boxes. All right, that's it for this step. Thanks for following along. Make sure you hit subscribe. Thanks for watching Bad Hombre Garage.